Hello and welcome to another episode of The Rest is Entertainment Questions Edition.
Welcome to the Rest is Entertainment Questions and Answers Edition.
Oh, I'm Marina Hyde.
That's where I recognise you from. I knew it. Yes, and I'm Richard Osman. Hello, everybody. Should we jump straight in,
Please.
Marina? I have the first question for you. It's a top three you'll be delighted to hear. You're really warming to them.
I can't get enough of them now. I've broken through some sort of pain barrier, but I still do find it hard to get them down to three. But
if anyone was listening to the Tuesday episode, I hope someone was. I even managed to get you to do a top 10 in proper reverse order.
God, I'm growing so much as a person and as a podcaster.
Yeah, you know what? You're growing so much as a podcaster. Which is all you've ever dreamed of.
Very, very small start.
Yes.
Okay.
Guy Nash has a question for you. Guy Nash says, what are your top three opening credit sequences? And he says, you know when it always says skip intro, which I always do, but Guy says, what are the top three that you will never skip through?
Yeah, Netflix introduced that button in 2017 because it was only 15% of people were just like trying to manually get through. And also because of binging, everybody was watching lots so you think, okay, I don't have to watch the whole titles 10 times in one evening. This is hard, but it ties into something which I wish I'd said when we were talking about theme tunes, which is that if the visuals are also amazing and it's got the music as well, the sort of double threat, Game of Thrones, I love all Game of Thrones. I love the little houses coming up and the music as well. So they work very well
together.
Never
seen it.
I can't believe you've never seen it. Okay. Succession, I love all the different headlines they have. They put their such funny sort of ATN headlines, which is the sort of Fox News equivalent in the show. Those are very good. Things like Dynasty and Dallas, going right back in the day, with those triple screens of each character, you'd have to see them in three different views. I used to love those. But of course, we couldn't fast forward through any of those things at the time. So in terms of what I genuinely would never fast forward through, I always watch okay, I'm going to have to put them in an order. In joint
and
three,
by the way, start on three,
third,
not
joint
one.
Third, yeah, okay, joint third, because I love both the music, and both of which are sort of folky songs. What We Do in the Shadows, I love the visuals, which are really great. The sort of comedy vampire series, which is brilliant, and Detectorists. I love that
lovely
theme, and it's very sort of calming, and I love that.
That's Johnny Flynn, isn't it? Does the theme to that? I think.
Yeah.
To the Detectorists.
Yes. Yes. And actually, there's a scene in one of the seasons where I think where it's maybe in one where it's being sung in the pub at one of the evenings. Yeah. Simpsons, I will always watch through because of the couch gag, which is the bit when they're all trying to cram in the sofa at the end and they do a different thing every time. And I will always watch that through. But it's funny, I also will watch the earlier part of it just because I know the couch gag is coming. So it does make. How many times have I seen those titles? I mean.
And the saxophone is different every time.
Yes, and the saxophone is different.
And what part is writing on the board.
Yes. And then I have to say, honestly, my number one is because what sort of animal, no matter that they know who works in Thunderbird 4, does not watch every single ones of the Thunderbirds when they're telling you would have to be an animal to say, I know who's on which particular craft and I'm not going to, I know you're in space. You have to watch Thunderbirds. I'll go all the way down. And if you don't, you are a monster.
Yeah, because they're risking their lives for you. The least you can do is watch their titles.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
It is very weird when you watch anything now and you can't fast through the credits. That feels like suddenly you're in the Middle Ages. It's like suddenly you're banging like a rock against another rock and trying to make fire. You're like... intro won't skip now. Yeah,
people were doing it in their own way, and they were actually sort of turning up about halfway through the first scene, thinking, "Oh, that'll do." And so Netflix didn't want them to do that, so they gave them the power, and now look where we are. But equally, they spend huge amounts of money on these credit sequences. So people love Dexter. People always like that.
Well, funnily enough, that's on Guy's list of three. Guy has three on his list. He has The Good Fight, Dexter and Vikings. Those are I remain untroubled by Vikings up to now. I don't mean in my life. I mean the program. I also remain untroubled by Vikings in my life.
Thank goodness.
It's not often you look on the old Ring doorbell and there's a long ship outside. You think, oh God, pillagers. Best credits for me. Simply because it had the greatest graphic transition. We hadn't seen the like ever when the outline of the island of Jersey transforms into the word Bergerac.
Okay.
That for me is the best.
That is state of the art.
At the time, it absolutely blew our mind. It's like when Top of the Pops started sort of putting things in little bottles and spinning them round, and we were like, "Wow, we'd seen the future."
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go Bergerac. But yeah, no, by and large, I'll fast. However beautiful something is, as you say, if you watch 4 episodes of something in a row, you're not going to sit through it. But better that than the thing of like The Apprentice and stuff like that, where really you've got to do 7 minutes of what's happening this series and what's happened before. Oh God,
the coming ups. I hate the coming ups.
Yeah.
At the end, and I hate what you've just seen.
They've really cut down on it on The Apprentice this year. I think they've cut like a minute and a half off it. So I keep missing the beginning. But sometimes that's okay. In The Apprentice, you can usually catch up. Oh, they're in a meat market. Yes, they are.
I was thinking, is it a sales task again?
Yeah, they're talking about children's
kites.
Sales
task every week.
Yeah. Oh, are you having to make an advert even though you're not in advertising and it takes a really, really long time to make an advert?
Yeah, still a sales task.
Yeah. By the way, that sounds like I'm mocking The Apprentice. I absolutely love The Apprentice.
Yeah, I no longer watch it, I have to say.
What?
Yeah.
You're crazy.
No, I've moved on. I've watched it for many, many seasons, but it's over now for me.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
The American one is good. Who hosts that? The Donald Trump, if you know him.
Yeah.
They should do more of those.
Yeah. I mean, I'm told the talent's no longer available, but
hey, listen.
If he ever gets a window, I'll be very happy. If he's free to present The Apprentice again, I'd be very, very pleased.
Every time I present a new TV show, my brain goes, I'm afraid the talent is no longer available.
This episode is brought to you by Sky. Sky is home to some of the very best shows, including, and we're very excited about this, the brand new season of House of the Dragon.
That's right. Season 2, House of the Dragon, is streaming right now on Sky. You're an enormous fan, aren't you?
I am an enormous fan. And if you're not already an enormous fan, you can catch up with the first season. But the new one has just dropped and the hype is justified. The first episode is brilliant. Can't wait to see more of what's going to happen. Now everyone's at war. And more shocking twists and turns.
There's a lot of dragon action in this.
There's a huge amount of dragons. There's going to be 5 new dragons.
And the clue's in the name, right?
Yeah. Yeah. House of many dragons, but actual real name of the show, House of the Dragon.
Best dragon?
Best dragon. There's a massive one that hasn't been claimed yet called Vermithor that's huge.
Vermithor?
That's a very powerful dragon. But there's a little one called Moondancer.
House of the Dragon is available now exclusively on Sky.
Go to sky.com to find out more.
Do you have a question for me? Thank you, Guy Nash, by the way, for that.
Yes, I do have a question for you. It's from Dan Chesney. It looks like tickets to be in the audience for a show are always free. Is this always the case? What happens if you can't fill a studio audience, even with free tickets? Do you go ahead anyway?
Dan Chesney should go on The Apprentice because I would buy anything that Dan Chesney hawks. It's a really good question. I just told you the talent is no longer available. Yes, studio audiences are a really interesting thing because obviously you want to fill a studio, especially if you're doing a comedy show. So if you're doing Have I Got News for You, or if you're doing 8 out of 10 Cats or something like that. So there's lots of specialist agencies. Standing Room Only is one of them. The Applause Store is one of them. And you can sign up to those places and they will advertise, when the Graham Norton show is coming back or when one of those big panel shows is coming back. And you can apply for tickets there. And for those shows, it's always a huge waiting list. I always remember the biggest waiting list for any TV show in history. I think it had like an 11-year waiting list at one point. Was Question of Sport.
Really?
Yeah, almost impossible to get in to see.
It's easier to get in, become a member of MCC than it is to actually.
It'd be easier to get into the Royal Box at Wimbledon than be in the audience in Question of Sport. So if you ever watch Question of Sport and look at the audience, these people, that's the elite.
For the long haul. Their names were put down as nippers.
As children. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like Eton. So for those big shows, by and large, it's quite easy to fill. And also you would always oversell because tickets are free and they are free for every single TV show. That's the way you do it. Because it's such an integral part of a show to have a live audience there, no one ever charges. So part of the budget is to get an audience together. But because of that, there's always an oversupply of tickets. So if you come to see Have I Got News for You, which I'm going to say is 300 maybe, audience, they will send out 600 tickets because lots of people just won't turn up because they haven't paid and, there's no commitment to go or anything like that. But there is always people who go to a lot of TV shows know to get there early because if you do turn up 5 minutes before like you would do for a film, you're probably not going to get in. So the people at the end won't get in. Things like Would I Lie to You has an enormous waiting list. Have I Got News for You has got an enormous waiting list as well. If you're doing a new show, a pilot or something like that, it's harder because, again, you do want an audience by and large. You want them to be there, but of course, they don't know what the show is.
And how many eps, by the way, will you watch of one of those if you are in the audience?
If you're in, it sort of depends. If it's Have I Got News for You or Would I Lie to You, it'll be one. So you turn up for an evening. It's brilliant, by the way. for both of those shows, I would say there's no real recording breaks or anything like that, like you would have in a sitcom. So you're watching like a 2-hour version of your favorite show. So if you go and watch Would I Lie to You, just like 4 stories that are never going to be on TV, but it's just a joy from start to finish. Have I Got News is exactly the same in that regard. So it's a really, really, really great night out. Sitcoms are slightly different because there's an awful lot of sort of doing the same scene 14 times, changing the cameras. And so that's a longer evening and perhaps slightly less fulfilling. But if you love a sitcom, it's amazing because the actors will talk to you in between takes and, you feel really involved. And of course, you see things that no one's ever going to see on TV. If you're doing a new show, if you've got a big star, if I'm doing a pilot and Rob Brydon is hosting, that's easy. You go on at Applause Store or Standing Room Only, say, do you want tickets to Rob Brydon's new show? Yeah. Rob will send out a link to that and the place is filled. If you don't have that, or if it's, a new one, or you're trying out new talent, then a lot of those companies, Standing Room Only, Applause Store, what have you, they will say, look, I know you want to have tickets to Graham Norton, which has a very long waiting list. If you want to raise your name up that waiting list, then you have to come and attend this pilot. There's this new pilot, say, it's going to be in Manchester, it's going to be in Glasgow, it's going to be in London. If you come to this show, you'll get extra points, which means you go up the waiting list for the more popular shows. Oh. So they're quite good like that. But often, sometimes you'll do a pilot or something, and it's not as full as it might be.
I think it's maybe it was a bit of a giveaway that Gladiators was going to do really well because the recognition of it, they were already able to obviously it's a show that previously existed, but they were able to fill that arena right from season 1
to fill the NEC. And it's interesting. We've just had my now good friend Legend on House of Games. And he was great, but secondly, he's talking about they're about to do the second series of that, and demand for tickets for that is Taylor Swift-like. I mean, it's absolutely off the charts. I mean, even before the first one, it had that name recognition, and parents were going, honestly, you'll enjoy this. Now it is like demand is absolutely insane. Now, if you go and watch Gladiators, you can see the way that's shot. You're there for a long day. Yeah. You're in there for a long haul.
Because they've got to re-rig everything for each different
Exactly that. There's, you can have injuries, all sorts of things can happen. And in that sort of environment, and maybe we'll talk about if there's a different question about it at some point, but the warm-up artist is the absolute hero of that environment. And the best warm-up artists, and they're the ones who stand there when the thing isn't filming and, you need to, if you're doing the last leg and you've got an advert break, the warm-up artist will go on. The warm-up artist goes on before a show, does sort of 20 minutes of chat just to sort of get the audience warmed up. That's where the name comes from. A few jokes, just so people get used to laughing and animated. And then in any recording break, they come on. So if you're doing Would I Lie to You or Have I Got News for You, they won't come on at all because you're going straight through. If you're doing an ITV show, they will. And if you're seeing Gladiators, there's an awful lot of audience participation. There's things are being rigged. But I will say, it's just a great night out. It really. I went to see Have I Got News for You when I was 21, so it was that 92. I went to see it being recorded up at Fountain Studios, and then I worked on it as a writer, and now I've been on it, and that's a lovely. But honestly, the watching it was almost
if you're interested in the
exciting.
nuts and bolts of any of these things, there's no better place to be.
Yeah, exactly, and people, Ian Hislop has chats to the audience, and it's just it feels like a proper treat. The stuff that goes wrong is fun. The stuff that goes right is fun. But lots of shows these days, there's fewer and fewer audiences now. Is the truth. During the pandemic, of course, we couldn't have audiences. I remember Would I Lie to You? We did as because people had to sit apart from each other, and so suddenly you got half an audience. And in some ways, half an audience is worse than no audience because you're getting a laugh, but it's it doesn't feel a fulfilling laugh when you're used to a big studio full. So there's a cinema in Elstree. There's a cinema in Pinewood where that was made, and they took that over as well, and people were watching a live stream of it, and you combine the two laughters, if that makes sense. But lots of shows. Pointless no longer has an audience. The Chasers never had an audience. But those big comedy shows, it's an absolute ball to go along and do that. But if you have half an audience for a pilot, it can drag. And if you're making a pilot that goes on all evening and people start leaving, which they really do, And boy, oh boy, that feels like...
yes, I guess they're within their rights to just leave.
Exactly. I mean, you sort of make it so that they think they're not, they think it's illegal to leave.
Yeah.
But if people want to get up and go, then they do. And when you're making a pilot, of course, you make mistakes, and you haven't got the cameras quite where they should be, so you are doing things over and over and over again. And yeah, that can be a long evening.
Brutal.
Yeah, but honestly, for the big shows, it's absolutely free. Get your name down, get on one of those agencies, and it's a proper night out. House of Games has never had an audience. It's always been just me and 4 people and the crew, because I used to love watching those shows. And it just because if you're filming a lot, you can just get it done and get it through, and everyone feels relaxed, like a podcast. You wouldn't have an audience for a podcast. You wouldn't do a podcast at the Royal Albert Hall or anything, would you? That would be the end of culture as we know it.
Yeah.
But so if you don't have an audience, you make a slightly different type of show, and if you do have an audience, you play out to the audience, and if you don't have an audience, you play to the people who are there. So it's but it's so for anyone who asks me, can they come into the audience of House of Games, I'm afraid they can't.
Sadly not.
Marina, Jake Clements has a question. For the Euros and every other major sporting event, the TV studios are always in incredible locations, often by well-known landmarks. The BBC are right outside Brandenburg Gate, so are ITV also looking at the Reichstag. Logically, I think it was a green screen, but is it genuine? How do they get such incredible spots?
It is. You can tell that is not a green screen. It couldn't possibly look that good. You can tell when something is a green screen.
And also because Gary was wearing a green T-shirt the other day, so he would have disappeared.
Yes, he would have just melted into the screen. Like
I want to know where he got it from. So it's quite something.
Turns out it's quite a plot line. Yes, so that they have built that. These are these purpose-built things. In recent years, FIFA and UEFA have built a sort of collection of these studios with iconic locations, and then they lease it to the various broadcasters. So the BBC have got the Spanish broadcaster next door. You often see these things. They do look extraordinary. Like I remember seeing one for the Women's World Cup last year in Australia. How many if you looked around with the Sydney Opera House in the background, and if you sort of turn around and you look at the actual studios themselves, they're kind of clinging on to little bits of Sydney Harbour, and you think, how have you done that? But it is the prime view of the Opera House or something like that, and in this case, the Brandenburg Gate.
It's essentially a series of porter cabins all stacked on top of each other, and that's part of the deal for giving the championships to Germany, or wherever you're going to give them to, is part of that. Part of the pitch document is, what are the facilities for the media? Where are we going to shoot this? And so if you think, but it must be impossible to build all these porter cabins right next to the Brandenburg Gate, well, you don't get the gig if you don't let them do that. So UEFA will say, look, we need, X amount of land, and it's got to be somewhere iconic to build these things. And they can then auction them off to the highest bidder. So there are levels, literally levels, in those porter cabins where different federations from different television companies in different territories have their studio. So BBC and ITV, I think, are both on the top floor, which is a nice view anyway, but also means they have a little roof section. You'll see both of them sometimes they go out on the roof when it's not too windy or rainy.
Beyond the penthouse, that is the real, you've got every single option. But they do look absolutely incredible. And obviously we didn't used to have these sort of things. There would always be those kind of news gantries for a big event around Buckingham Palace or something, but they're a lot more basic than these, which are proper, fully functioning studios. Yeah,
they're amazing. And, Jake is right. You have to think it's green screen because it's so stunning. And how would you ever be able to build a studio there? And it's the money. It's the fact that the championships are there in the first place. They can literally put the studios where they want to have them. And the bigger territories and the bigger channels are able to afford the biggest studios and the best views. And BBC and ITV are pretty much on a par with each other in this one.
And it'll be good to see where in the Olympics all of those studios are, because you can be sure that they will be absolutely jaw-dropping wherever they've managed to put them.
So for the Paris Olympics, if we're not seeing the Eiffel Tower in the background, something's gone wrong somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, Eurosport or Discovery Plus, you might be getting the Arc de Triomphe. It's a great monument, but it is a second-tier one compared to the Eiffel Tower.
The Notre Dame post being burned down.
Yeah. Here's a good one on comedian stage intros. David Brocklesby asks, would you know why the vast majority of the time comedians announce themselves to the stage?
Thank you, David. Brocklesby is a good surname. I've said it before, I'm always looking out for names of murder victims, David, and Brocklesby is a good one. I am in the next book. I'm literally just going to take surnames from this Q&A thing. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
You've had some fantastic ones.
Yeah, most of my characters come from like snooker players from the 70s and 80s. Yeah. Like really like low ranking. The baddie in the first film was called Ian Ventham. He's named after it. There's a snooker player called Steve Ventham. who was like a lowly ranked snooker player. They just got good surnames. But Brocklesby is a good one. Anyway, I digress. Comedians, yes. Often whenever you go to a gig, you'll hear someone say, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on stage, Josh Widdicombe." And that person will always be Josh Widdicombe. And it will always be Josh literally standing right next to the edge of stage. There'll be a handheld mic and he'll introduce himself and run on. I asked Josh himself why this was, because I figure, why not? And he has provided he's provided David Brocklesby with this reply.
Hello, Richard and Marina, long-time listener, first-time caller, Josh Widdicombe here. And can I just say, I'm a huge fan of the podcast and of your writing, Marina. Anyway, why do comedians seemingly, no matter how successful or famous, introduce themselves on stage? Okay, there's various reasons for that. So the first one is venues, even massive venues that aren't arenas, up to the size of Hammersmith Apollo, Edinburgh Playhouse. You are literally touring with very few people. You're touring with you, a tour manager, possibly a support or possibly not, and a sound man or woman. So it's basically a lack of staff thing in one way. The other thing is, the reason I do it, it really helps the support if it feels like the comedian you've gone to see is almost kind of saying, you will like this person. That really helps the support act. In arenas, it's still that thing of, I think comedians are nervous. They're nervous about what they're going to come on to. They're nervous about the atmosphere. And I think it's a sense of control. It's a sense of being able to big yourself up. So those are the general reasons. But mainly, lack of other people and wanting to be helpful to your support act.
So there it is. Firstly, it goes sound man or woman. Or woman.
Might be a lady.
Well done, Josh. And he says essentially there's not many people. So what he's saying really is it's cheapness.
But also control. Cheapness and control.
The two absolute tenets of all successful comedians.
Yeah.
Cheapness and control. No, I think it is that thing. And also they're so used to every great comic has really come through the ranks and of tiny little stages where they have to introduce themselves. I just think it's a nice thing to have to do. Josh, by the way, when people say who's the nicest person in show business, he's right up there on the top of the list. He's a good one.
Yeah, he's a keeper. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. Big fan of your writing.
Yes, we are very big fans of your writing as well. So many years ago, before he became a megastar, he used to work at The Guardian.
Oh, yes, he used to write their football reports,
Yeah.
didn't he? But also, when I go and do book events sometimes, and it's interesting, lots of places understand, you do sort of need to be introduced if there's a big audience. Someone has to say...
You can't just wander onto the stage. Oh, hi.
Yeah, but lots of book events don't understand that. So book events will go, oh, everyone's out there, so you can just wander out.
Yeah.
You think, I think that's quite unsatisfying for an audience. They've sort of paid. So then I'll do the old microphone thing and I'll introduce. I interviewed Kate Atkinson at Cheltenham, who's one of my favourite writers of all time. And again, they said, "Oh, the two of you just wander out." I think I'm not just going to wander out with the greatest living writer in Britain. So I said, so Kate was. I said, Kate, I'm going to give you an introduction. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to stage Britain's greatest living writer, Kate Atkinson. And the place goes wild. And then everyone settles in. Everyone understands what they're there for. Everyone knows they're going to enjoy themselves. It's
Let's
nice
have a
for
sense
her.
of occasion.
A sense of occasion.
This is one of my great bugbears of modern life. Let's have a sense of occasion for these things.
Yeah, it's exactly that. You must always be introduced. That's why at my wedding I had a walk-on music as well.
Yeah.
That's the thing that drives me mad about weddings. The groom just standing there. Produce it. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, listen, bride always comes on last. That's, absolutely fine. But let the groom come on and have some music as well, because then you got two hits at people crying.
Yeah.
Which is what a wedding is for.
Why would you deny yourself that?
Yeah. You must always with any audience, and that includes a congregation, you must always make sure they're there, they know something's happening, and there's a sense of occasion. Always be a big intro. Put your audience at rest, wherever you are. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Josh Widdicombe. He meets so many celebrities. He should just get the biggest celebrity he's ever met to just do one introduction of ladies and gentlemen, Josh Widdicombe, and play that everywhere.
This guy I used to know sorry, this has made me think of something completely tangentially related.
That doesn't sound like this podcast.
He also used to meet lots and lots of celebrities, and would always say, he was a journalist, and say, look, things are looking a bit bad for Frank Sinatra. I wonder if we could just get a quote so that we could have it for our quotes file if he does die. So when the time came, this was Ali Ross at the Sun, when the time came and Frank Sinatra did die, he was like, I've got a little something I've been working on for the last 10 years. And it was absolutely everybody had given a quote
God, that's
about,
amazing.
if Frank, on the basis that if things were looking a bit dicey for him. And he had just this extraordinary treasure trove of quotes from absolutely everyone. Some of them were ridiculous, like Samantha Fox. What do you think about this? But then lots of them were every big person that had ever been interviewed. So it was pretty much a hold of gold.
That's like Peter Dixon, who does the X Factor voice. So he's had that incredibly famous voice. He's literally does every single person he ever meets answer machine. He literally, every single person he ever meets, he gets to do their answering machine message. Back when people had answering machine messages, they said, "Oh, you couldn't just do my answering machine message. That'd be funny." He's like, "This is like the 90th I've done today. Yeah. This is like the 90th I've done today." Also, Michael Buffer, who's the "Let's Get Ready to Rumble" guy. The
voice of boxing.
The voice of boxing. But yeah, you can hire him for 10 grand a pop. He'll come and open anything as long as you're happy to pay him. Because that voice is so incredible. That catchphrase is so amazing. That's his and his alone.
I think First Class Travel as well.
First Class Travel, all of that. I mean,
please put that in your budget if you're considering him. He will not do it.
Michael Buffer ain't flying coach.
No.
I will not fly coach. Marina, this is right up your street. Nick Watson asks, do actors who sign a contract to be in a DC film have to agree not to work for Marvel and vice versa? Ryan Reynolds seems the only obvious exception as an actor who's been in both DC and Marvel worlds.
Okay, yes, he has been. He was in a very unsuccessful Green Lantern for DC, and he is also obviously Deadpool. But there are actually quite a few others because Idris Elba's been in Thor and Suicide Squad. Tom Hardy, obviously, he's Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, but he's also Venom. Affleck's been Daredevil and Batman. Affleck.
We just need the surname.
Yeah, no one's favourite of either of those. Michael Keaton, who is in the sort of original rebooting of this sort of modern era of Batman, I guess, which is all the way back in 1989, so maybe doesn't count as modern. But he's also been a baddie in that first Tom Holland Spider-Man. So there are quite a few that have done it. The only reason I don't, there's no rule that you can't do it, but obviously if someone is so associated with a role, it's difficult and you wouldn't really want them to bring that baggage, but there is no rule that you can't do it, and lots of people have done tiny roles in both, but there's been a point where they've saturated so much of the culture that you've really got to be in one or the other of one of them, and pretty much most people have been in one, or most actors have been in one or the other. When we were looking for the show that I have been working on, which is in a superhero, it's set in a sort of fictional superhero franchise movie, it was so hard to find actors who hadn't actually at some level worked within these two universes. Yeah. It's really difficult because everyone has now done stuff, and you're sort of hoping that it's a small thing or it's something that didn't, but you couldn't possibly have put someone who was big in them. And also I think perhaps that would have undermined what you're kind of trying to say. But
there's no actual rule. It's not like the PDC and BDO darts.
No,
you can.
No, you're not in a rival tour.
Yeah, it's not like Live Golf.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Got to Live Golf the movie. That'd be quite something.
I maintain that someone I knew wanted to write a comedy about golf, Evangelist, because there's a lot of very hard right, small state, small taxation American golfers who also still have what would Jesus do. Yeah, wristbands. Answer none of those things that I've just said. He wouldn't do any of those things, and he certainly wouldn't go and play in Live Golf. But look, this is what it is. And I thought golf movies make a lot of money, and so I've always thought it would be quite funny to try and write one. But I think the type I would want to write is not the one they'd like to turn out for.
I'd watch a golf. I love a golf movie.
Oh, so do I.
Happy Gilmore, top 3 Happy Gilmore, Tin Cup,
yeah.
I've run out. Caddyshack,
obviously.
Caddyshack number 1.
But the Golf Evangelist movie would be funny.
Legend of Bagger Vance.
Yeah, Legend of Bagger Vance.
Yeah.
I think that about wraps us up for today, Richard.
That was a lot of fun.
It was.
Should we do it again next week?
I think we should do.
So we'll see you next Tuesday?
See you next Tuesday.